greetings to you. I am Pearl John from Logos Management, and I'm delighted that you join me week after week on this journey of demystifying the heroes of the world to draw insights from their lives. Last week we continued the life of Nehemiah part 4, and we referenced the theme rebuild, revive and restitute, and we spoke of 3 key learnings. 1, survey your life. 2, surrender your life, and 3, straighten your life. This week we go on to part 5 and focus on the theme overcoming the opposition. Overcoming the opposition. As believers, we have been called to participate in building God's kingdom, but opposition is inevitable. You remember the words of Jesus, who said, "In this world you will have sufferings." That is an integral part of Christian living. Nehemiah faced opposition as he worked to rebuild the wall around Jerusalem. In Nehemiah 4, 1-10, we see how Nehemiah dealt with the opposition that he faced and how we can perhaps apply the approach that he adopted in our lives today. Nehemiah experienced opposition from Sanballat and Tobiah, who were mocking and ridiculing the work that he was carrying out along with his team. This opposition was not unexpected. In fact, Jesus warned his disciples that they would face opposition as they spread the gospel. In John chapter 15 verses 18 and 19, we read, "The world hates you. You know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love its own. Yet because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you." Thus, we cannot shy away but expect to face oppositions as we move to build God's kingdom. This opposition may come in various forms, such as persecution, ridicule, or even self-doubt. However, we should not be discouraged, for Jesus promised that he would be with us always in Matthew chapter 28 and 20, and in John 16:33 that he has overcome the world. So it gives us tremendous assurance that we can overcome the world as well. If you consider the life of Apostle Paul, he faced incredible opposition as he worked to spread the glorious message of the gospel, including beating and imprisonment and shipwrecks, and we read that in 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verses 23-28. Despite all of this, he remained steadfast in his faith and continued to preach the gospel until his death. So, how does one overcome opposition? I have 3 lessons that I'd like to present here for your consideration. 1, overcoming opposition through faith. Overcoming opposition through faith. When we face opposition in our lives, it can be tempting to give up and lose faith. However, Nehemiah and his team responded to opposition with faith in God. He acknowledged that the opposition was not just against them, but against God, who had called them to rebuild the walls. And as Christians, when we face opposition in various forms, it may be from the world, the devil, or even from our loved ones, we must remember that we are not alone in our battles. God is with us, and he has promised in Deuteronomy chapter 31 and 6 to never leave us nor forsake us. We must therefore respond to opposition with faith in God. We need to trust that he will strengthen us and see us through the challenges that we face. We find a real-life example of this kind of faith and dependence on God in the life of George Muller, a Christian evangelist and philanthropist who lived in the 19th century. George Muller established orphanages in England and cared for thousands of children over the course of his life. Despite facing significant obstacles and financial struggles, Muller never asked for donations or publicized his work. Instead, he relied on prayer and faith for God to provide for the needs of the children under his care. His faith was not just a private belief, but a way of life that shaped his action. As we seek to follow Nehemiah's example, we too can cultivate a deeper faith and dependence on God. This might mean spending more time in reading God's word, seeking the counsel of God, reflecting on it, and trusting in God's provision even when we cannot see the way forward. By relying on God's strength and guidance, implicitly we can accomplish great things and bring glory to his name. Secondly, overcoming opposition through prayer. Nehemiah responded to the opposition he faced by praying to God and continuing to work on the wall. In Nehemiah 4 and 5, we read his prayer where he asked God to strengthen their hands for the work. He did not let the opposition distract him or cause him to lose focus on the task at hand. Throughout the book of Nehemiah, we see him praying and seeking God's guidance at every step of the rebuilding process. In chapter 5, verse 19, he prays a simple but profound, powerful prayer, asking God to remember him for his good deeds and to have mercy on him. When we face opposition in our lives, we should respond by turning to God in prayer and seeking his guidance. We should not let the opposition distract us from the mission or the cause for us to lose faith in God. You find this Apostle Peter, who was an exemplary example of this prayer. When he was imprisoned for preaching the gospel, he did not despair, but instead he prayed fervently to God for deliverance. And in Acts chapter 12 verse 5, we read this: as a result, God sent an angel to rescue him from the prison. Another example of this is found in the life of Martin Luther King Jr., a Christian pastor and civil rights leader who faced intense opposition and even violence as he worked to end racial segregation in the United States of America. Despite facing many obstacles, including arrests and beatings and death threats, King remained committed to his principles of nonviolence and love for all people. He prayed earnestly, and courage and strength be given to him that he would need to continue the work that God had entrusted in his hand in the face of intense opposition. Thirdly, overcoming opposition through unity. Nehemiah and his team faced opposition not only from outside but also from within. In Nehemiah 4:10, we read that people of Judah said, "The strength of the laborers is giving out, and there is so much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall." People were discouraged and they began to lose hope. However, Nehemiah responded by calling them to unity. In Nehemiah 4:14, he said, "Don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your families and your sons and your daughters and your wives and your homes." As Christians, we should leverage the power of unity when we face opposition. We should stand together and fight as one. We are called to support each other and encourage one another. As in Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verses 9 and 10, two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them. No one to help them up. Unfortunately, we find there is a significant amount of squabbles and infighting that destroys the unity within our churches and our communities. Nehemiah fostered unity, and you and I are called to nurture it in our own context. Imagine you are part of a church that is facing financial challenges. Instead of getting discouraged and pointing fingers, you will do well to respond by calling the church to unity. You should encourage the members to support each other and work together to find solutions to the problems. An example of this is found in the early church. In Acts chapter 2 verses 42 to 47, we see the believers devoted themselves to each other, sharing their possessions and meeting together regularly. And this community helped to strengthen their faith and enable them to continue to spread the gospel in their times. Will you commit to be a Nehemiah in your community? This is Pearl John signing off the Other 167. Thank you very much for watching the Other 167. Let me urge you to share this with your friends and neighbors and encourage them to be benefited as well. Have a great day and a glorious weekend. God bless you.